Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Friday. It is the 12th. Is it the 12th? The 12th of November, 2021. And my name is Kerry Holzman. And today I have got another build for you. It's actually more of a motherboard prep. And then this is going to be a standard 8-year build that I typically do, featuring these parts right here. All the parts are listed in the video notes. But as you can see, we've got the Gigabyte B460 motherboard and a 10600k CPU to go with that. I've got some brand new RAM here, Team T-Force Vulcan Z. If you notice, the package got ripped open in shipping, so we'll have to check this RAM, make sure it's still okay. That's 32 gigs, 16 gigs each. Pay attention, these are on sale right now at Amazon. This is the Intel, the 660p 1 terabyte solid state drive is $89.99. So anytime you can get a terabyte under $100, that's a good deal. So at Amazon right now, if you follow my link while they're in stock, these are, as of today, November 12th, 2021, Intel 660p 1 terabyte, $89.99. If you use my link in the description below, I make a commission. Now this particular model might be the 665. There's not a whole lot of difference between the 665, the 670, and the 660. Sequentially, I just named them in the wrong order. 660's generation 1, 665 is a slight improvement, 670 would be generation 2. They have some minor improvements, and overall amount of terabytes written increases as the model numbers go up. But I've never seen one of these fail. In fact, I've never seen a failed NVMe drive at all. And I think it's a great deal. $89.99 for 1 terabyte NVMe storage. Now, this isn't as fast as the Samsung 970 EVO. That 2 terabyte drive at Amazon is $239.99, I want to say, as of today. And that's more for performance, if you're more performance oriented. Obviously, with solid state drives, the bigger the drive is, the larger its capacity, the faster it runs in that family of drives. So whether it's QLC, TLC, SLC, MLC, whatever technology they're using on the NVMe chip. And you can Google search that or YouTube search that if you want to learn more about the technology that's used in the solid state drives. But this is a QLC drive. Those are always going to be your budget drives. And this is going to run, I'm going to say probably around 1,800, 2,000 megabytes per second, which compared to, I've seen laptop hard drives running at 80. That's a pretty big improvement. And desktop hard drives running between 120 and 200. So when you run it at 1,800, 2,000, it's significantly faster than a mechanical hard drive. Also significantly faster than even a SATA-based solid state drive, which peaks out at 550. So compare 550 to 1,800 to 2,000, something like that is what we can expect. $90 for 1 terabyte. I'm telling you, take advantage of that deal. And keep an eye on that Samsung 970 EVO. The prices have been going up and down. I picked a couple up. The price fluctuated about 4 times in one day. And I just kept watching it throughout the day, and it dropped to $232. So it's just a few dollars less than it is now. And I suspect we're going to see more drops on that particular product price as we approach the holidays and through the Christmas season. I think it's going to drop to as low as maybe 200 or 210, under 220 anyway. I'm got a good feeling about it. So just keep an eye on it if you want a good deal. And they're a really good price right now anyway. So in any event, this is a budget computer, so we're going to use a budget drive. And when you go faster, from 2,000 megabytes per second to 4,000, it results in milliseconds of difference. So unless you're a real demanding user, you probably wouldn't notice it except on benchmarks. Now, to keep everything cool, of course, I've gone back to my old favorite here, the Scythe Mugen 5, which right here, brand new in the box. I ordered a bunch of these. These are $10 more than the silver version. This is all black. You've already seen me install one of these before. And because this is going into the Corsair 200R case, I've got to remember not to put the heatsink on until the motherboard goes into the case first, so I can get into that upper left corner to hook up the rear case fan and the 8-pin CPU power connector. Then once that's done, I can put the heatsink on. But I will go ahead and prep this board now by installing the back plate for the cooler and get it ready so that all I have to do is add the heatsink to it later. And then I want to make sure I test this memory. I'll do that later running memtest 86. I have a video that shows you how to run, to create a memtest 86 bootable USB flash drive so you can test your RAM. A lot of people have bad RAM and don't even know it. And the reason you don't know it is because you're not using it. When you start using the computer where it starts peeking out at the amount of RAM you have, if you have any bad RAM, that's when it shows up, and it results in random crashes. So I recommend everybody download and run memtest 86. At some point, it's free, just to get a peace of mind that everything's running like it should. If you have any bad RAM, it's not repairable. Most RAM has a lifetime warranty from the manufacturer, but that determines, where you bought your RAM and what kind of system it is. If it's pre-built, there might be different warranty restrictions than, say, if you did it yourself. So when I say lifetime, I mean if you go buy your own RAM, like I show here on this channel, as far as I know, that all has lifetime warranties. And lifetime means the lifetime of as long as the manufacturer makes it. So if you have lifetime warranty DDR2 memory, it's not under warranty anymore because the manufacturer stopped making that stuff years ago. So lifetime is in regard to relevance. So keep that in mind. And a couple shots out here. Let's go ahead and I'll move over to camera 1 now. Let me go over to camera 1. And there we go. Okay, we're good. Now, a couple of shots out to people who have contributed already. So let me say thank you to these kind and generous folks. Tony Wallow kicks us off with $4.99. Hey, thank you, Tony. Hey, there's Peter Laycock. He says, good evening, Carrie, and everyone in the chat from Edinburgh in Bonnie, Scotland. And Peter generously contributes, as he often does, 50 pounds. Thank you, Peter. Bob Connors contributes $25. He says, hey, Carrie, today I didn't take a nap, and here I am, right on time. No brain fog or brain freeze this time. Stay tuned. Well, it's coming. I induce it. No, it's all good, Bob. Good to see you. Thank you for your contribution. And there's my friend Ron Hillier in the chat room. And I see Sarge Tech in there, Thomas Backenstow, and Ian Gooch, as well as David Herzog, Paul Kitching. And Thomas contributes $20. Thank you, Thomas Backenstow. And Ian Gooch contributes 10 pounds. Right on. Well, thanks, you guys. Thanks for supporting the show. Robert Katnya contributes €5. He says, hey, Carrie, nice to see you again. Thank you, Robert. Good to see you too, my friend. And let me just make a change here. Where are we at? Right there. See if this will keep track of contributions today if I select that tab. We'll see how this works out. YouTube used to give me a running list of everybody who contributed during a live stream. And as you can imagine, after several hours, I have forgotten most of the time who contributed throughout the first couple hours or throughout anything up to the last 10 minutes. So that feature stopped working on YouTube and I had no way to sort of give another shout out at the end. So I'm going to try and keep that open, and I hope it'll work that way. Now, as for the streaming setup, I made a few changes. Hopefully everything looks and sounds okay. My previous capture card was made by Magewell. It's an $899 4-port HDMI input capture card. It's internal to the computer, 1080p only. And when I put the cameras in 4K, the capture card has no idea what the signal is and it won't process the signal. So then I got a Blackmagic capture card for 4K broadcast, but it only has one input. And you have to load the Blackmagic software, and you have to have the software, you have to tell the software what resolution your camera's in that you're plugging in. It won't auto-detect it. So you'd have to change it on the camera and then change it on the software. And then it also needs a driver, and then OBS can see it. Now, of course, in OBS, you have to make the changes manually. OBS doesn't auto-detect that. So now I've got the Elgato 4K 30 internal quad port HDMI capture card, very similar to the Magewell, but about 60% less in price, about $350 instead of $899. And it's auto sensing. So when we broadcast, last live broadcast, I tried broadcasting in 4K and the bandwidth just wasn't having it. But what I've discovered is I can leave the cameras in 4K mode, and the Elgato capture card is automatically reducing that down to 1080 for me because I've got it set for 1080. And I'm hoping that that improves the picture quality instead of degrades it. So you guys will have to let me know if you notice any picture quality difference between a pure 1080 signal or a 4K signal being downsized into 1080. So let me know what you think about the sharpness and the details of today's video. If it looks any different, better or worse, I appreciate your feedback on that. But I think that we should have a good stable broadcast today. Everything's starting off really good here. OBS is in the green. I've raised the bit rate just a little tiny bit, no pun intended. And we'll see if that also improves the clarity of the video. There's also some camera settings and such that I can get into if I want to try and make the picture more vivid or give it more depth. But for right now, because I'm working with multiple cameras, any change I make on one has to be made to the others or it's going to look weird. So for right now, we're just going to test the streaming setup, make sure that everything is connected and functional for a good stream. And if all that works, then if time permitting, I'll mess around with some more camera settings, if that's even necessary. So this computer, this is going to a gentleman named Steve. Steve sent us his computer from Ohio, and that was the one that had the heatsink that was bouncing around inside of the case. And Steve needs a computer for general office work. He works out of his home. He has his own business. And it's that time, you know, the machine he has is quite old. And he sent me one of his oldest machines that he wasn't using anymore so that I could reuse the case, because these 200R computer cases are very, very difficult to get. A viewer reached out, you'll often see him in the chat room, Abdul Azim Patel, reached out and said he's got a computer in a 200R case, but he doesn't want that case anymore. And he asked me if I wanted his used case. And I'm like, yeah, I could definitely use it for a giveaway. So eventually, whenever he moves his parts to whatever new case he's getting, he'll send the case over to me. And the concern is that the cost of shipping that empty case is almost as much as buying the case when it was new. But at this point, trying to find one at any price is quite difficult. And if you do find them, they're like $150. So now suddenly shipping a case for $50 doesn't really seem that unreasonable. It's just based on, you know, at one point it was a $50 case. So towards the end, it was about $65 to $75. And then when the pandemic hit and everything occurred, that happened, there's just been no supply of them. So we'll make do with what we have. But in the meantime, we just gutted everything that Steve had except for his power supply, which we'll reuse. And he's got a DVD drive in there, which we will reuse. So his power supply, his DVD drive will remain in his 200R. And we're going to put this motherboard in there once we prep it. So I think that's what we're going to start doing today, is just prepping this B460. As I previously mentioned, the B560 is out now for the 12th gen chips. And those were on sale at Newegg for $89.99. So I ordered like 4 or 5 of them. And they're a good solid motherboard for businesses, for being able to have multiple monitors hooked up using an internal graphics. Or if you wanted to add a graphics card, that's always an option, of course. The 200R, I'm a fan of that because it still has the external bays. A lot of my business clients, they still want that internal DVD drive. And while they could buy one that's USB, and several have, I still have a few that just prefer to have the DVD drive. So that's fine, no problem. And then based on not being able to get any more 200Rs, I will probably recommend like the Pure Base 600 or something from Be Quiet. Although I'm not a fan of the hard drive mounting trays or the weight of the case when it comes to shipping. It is well built. It's very, very close to the 200R in the bells, whistles, and features I'm looking for. I just wish the drive cages were better designed and didn't require any tools like the Corsair 200R. We've got four 3.5-inch and four 2.5-inch drive bays that are completely toolless. The drives just lock in place. No screws, no screwdriver, nothing. Just slide the drive in. No drive rails, no drive trays, no drive caddies. I would really like to see more of that adopted in the computer case industry, because all these little parts that break, they get lost. People put the screws in wrong, they use the wrong screws. It just opens up a lot of opportunity for mistakes or builds to be done improperly or insecurely. So at any event, the marketplace decides, and who knows, maybe I will be able to work out some arrangement with a manufacturer to make my own sort of Car-ey-Holzman case, which will be more or less a 200R with better cable management. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a 200R made a little bit taller so you can have room for a liquid cooler up top, and a little bit thicker or wider so that there's room for cable management in the back. And apart from that, it's about perfect. And it doesn't need three, like a 200R has 3 front bays. It only needs 2. Technically, it really only needs 1, right? So people usually want a DVD drive. I've seen some people that want a DVD drive and then they add like an external drive storage bay, or they add a memory card reader. But again, all that can be done through USB. So going into 2022, I'll look into what that's going to require as far as it's probably something I'm going to have to finance more than likely, but I'll have to talk to a case manufacturer that would be willing to work with me on it, and I'm sure we could sell a lot of them, because not everybody wants RGB and a window on the side of their case. And there's a reason why Dell and HP sell so many computers, and why most of the computers they sell don't have that stuff. But in any event, you take a look back through the chat, see if I missed anything here. B560 is 11th gen. My apologies. Yeah, that's what thank you, David, for correcting me. The 460 is 10th gen, the 560 is 11th gen. And then there will be eventually a 12th gen version, but that won't be out till next year. Probably the first quarter of next year, I would guess. So yeah, thank you for correcting me. When I said it, it didn't sound right. But yeah, this is a 10th gen chip and a 10th gen board. And again, thank you for catching me on that. What is the shipping holdup? Well, just go look at the status of the ships sitting out, waiting to come into customs. Everything's being made in Asia and it's being put on a cargo ship. And the cargo ships, we have the same distribution problems we've always had. And then we have a lot of unemployment, or a lot of people quitting their jobs here in America, so that a lot of businesses aren't able to operate at normal capacity. So the case manufacturer here in the US, they're having staffing problems. Call their support line and see how long it takes them to get back to you. I'm talking about Corsair. It's very obvious. We're having staffing problems across the United States, and then we're having distribution problems. Since we're making everything in Asia, it's all being shipped via cargo ship. They used to load it up with spare, anytime there was spare room on a domestic flight or flights, they would sell that space for distribution. But flights have been severely reduced and impacted. Most airlines are understaffed. They've had many of the big airlines have had to cancel lots of flights, lots and lots of flights due to these staffing shortages. So, not sure why you would be puzzled why you live in the same world the rest of us do. So I don't know why I'd have to explain that. But I'm hoping that sometime around a year from now that we start seeing distribution back to some normality. But again, I don't know, I'm making a guess, but I settle in for a while. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And we'll just do the best with what we've got here and be grateful and appreciative we've got that much, honestly. I've been told a lot of stuff that's coming over on these ships it has to be thrown away because the ships have sat out so long that the items in the cargo containers became moldy and had to be disposed of. So I don't know how true that is, but certainly seems believable to me, and that you just don't know what's going on over there and the damage that's being caused by this product sitting out on the sea for, 4 to 8 weeks, just sitting there in that high humidity and that salt water and the salt air. It can be very damaging to the cargo the ships are carrying, negating the whole point of all of it, and they start all over again. There's a lot of complexity in this. It would be great if we kept making everything in our own country and we wouldn't have these problems. If we didn't outsource everything to other countries for cheaper labor, but if we made our own cases here in America, and we hired our own American labor, people that actually want to work and get paid a fair wage, and that we as Americans will pay more for that case, and we wouldn't have these distribution problems. They could make them all day, provide them to us, and it's not like there's a chip shortage that's going to prevent cases from being made, like they do preventing cars or appliances from being made, or graphics cards, etc. So in any event, just work with what we've got. I've got no reason to make up a story. Sometimes wonder why people question things. But in any event, that's where we are today, and we're doing the best we can with what we've got available. All right, let me just check one more time in the chat. Yeah, I would gladly pay more. If it was made here in the USA and we got rid of these distribution problems and it meant jobs for people, and the case was, if I could get a Corsair 200R case under $100, it's still a deal, right? So if they were selling it for $75 and we get rid of that shipping cost and we're manufacturing it here, so there's still some distribution cost, but nowhere near what it was. And then we can, get it from the factory into the consumer's hands faster. I think that would be much more profitable, and you'd have a lot of customers just because you were able to provide a product when your competitors were not. But what do I know? Just an idea seemed to make sense to me. Michael Dane contributes $5. He says Corsair still have the 200R listed for $65. Yeah, it's just out of stock. Thanks, Michael, for the contribution. Dennis Paulson contributes $10 and says it is snowing in Michigan. Don't tell me that. I miss my home state and I miss the snow. There's Luke Greenia joining us from Vermont. Welcome in, Luke. And Doug Betts joins us live, Windows Training. Doug has his own YouTube channel where he is also a computer technician with about the same years of experience I have, maybe a little bit more. And Doug shares his knowledge free of charge on YouTube. And if you can't get enough of this stuff, if you enjoy what I'm doing here, be sure and click on Doug's name there, which is Live Windows Training Doug Betts. And subscribe to his channel. Check out his content. He's got really good content. And if you're looking for for some personal help, Doug, that's not necessarily my job unless I'm paid for it. Doug does that free in order to make YouTube videos from it. So talk to Doug if you need assistance, and maybe you guys can help each other out. Mitch Morrison is not here today. I was going to kick off the show by talking about that. As we mentioned last Friday, Mitch is riding his motorcycle to Rocky Point, Mexico for some hanging out with some friends time, I guess. And so hopefully everything is good there and he's staying safe and enjoying his little weekend vacation, weekend getaway. Michael Dane says he's starting on his 75th computer for a fixed and low income family member. Well, you just got back from some serious assistance at the hospital. So take it easy, Michael, but it's very kind of you to, Michael's giving away what he's basically telling us here, 74 computers to people in his community who need them for their kids to go to school remotely. They're on a fixed income, And it's amazing that he does that. And he just got back from the hospital, pretty serious hospital visit, and already he's right back to working on computer number 75. And I'm just like, hey, that's really great, but just, you know, take it easy. You could only be so inspirational, Michael. After that, you're just showing off. All right. All right, so I think we can get started here. I'm going to set the cooler aside for right now. That over there. We're going to need the CPU. Well, I'll get the solid state drive here out of the box. Now, again, I don't care if the drive's a 660, a 665p, or a model 670. To me, the difference is, apart from price, are inconsequential as far as the build goes. So whichever one's the cheaper deal, that's the one I'll buy. And right now it's the 660, like I said, $89.99 for 1 terabyte of NVMe storage. That's PCIe Gen 3 by 4. It's a great deal. Daniel Kudajar contributes 20 Australian dollars. Hey, thank you, Daniel. We'll make sure Daniel's a moderator in here. Michael says he's taking it easy, just getting parts together for the build here soon. Perfect. All right, so in the box, as you can see, we've got that. We've got documentation, which I don't know what you need documentation for. Probably has your warranty information. This is the container with the good stuff right here. This is our $90 piece. And I'm going to take this out and just set it aside here because we're going to need it. And maybe we can get a close-up of what I'm about to do here. So I'm going to just throw that over there, and we'll set this down here, and I'll set the CPU here, move the documentation over there. The RAM, I am concerned that this RAM may be damaged. Hopefully it's okay. I'm sure it won't be a problem if I have to return it, and I have other RAM I can use. However, if the RAM is okay, then that relieves me of the anxiety and the hassle of having to return it. I'll put the RAM up there for now. Okay, so let's go to the motherboard. Let's go to the close-up camera. And here we go. So the B460-HD3. This board should be about $110. And I've seen it, the price fluctuate on this on Amazon from $135 to as low as $99, but it hasn't been at $99 for a long time. 110 is about the, like 109 and change is about the normal price. So anything in between, I'd say 110 and 120, is probably a good price to pay for this board. Or if you get the B560 for a cheaper price, that will also work with the 10th gen and the 11th gen chips. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what's in the box here. We've got our SATA cables, which we don't need to use for this build. This is a brand new board. This is not a returned item. And you can tell by just looking at the way things are packaged that it has sort of the routine, the way that this is packed, the way that you see it here, this is the way a new board is shipped from Gigabyte, including the way this bag looks. Oftentimes when they're returned, the bag has wrinkles and bends in it. Sometimes the I/O shield will be out of the bag. We don't have to worry about any little bags of M.2 screws or standoffs because, thankfully, Gigabyte includes them on the board. I think Asus could take a lesson from that. I'm going to try and get JJ from Asus to join us here maybe next week, and we'll talk about what's going on over there at Asus with the new boards, the new 12th gen stuff, as well as their latest on their new routers. And I'm really looking forward to that. JJ is one of my favorite people to talk to, and so to have him on the show, well, I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I'm going to enjoy it. The guy is just a machine when it comes to knowledge and information about computers and technology. He's got an incredible amount of knowledge that is just somehow all jammed in his head, and he can just give you minutia technical detail of darn near every chipset going back 15 years. And believe it or not, it comes up quite a bit how that's useful to have that knowledge and how it pertains to where we are today and why certain products are designed the way they are based on what they're built from, you know, their history. Okay, so here is our board. And you'll see that we've got two M.2s right here, and the screws and standoffs are already installed for us. When we build on these Gigabyte boards, they want us to use these gray sockets first for our RAM. And the first thing I want to do, I think, is put the CPU in, because that's super easy. We'll just slide this open. There's our brand new, beautiful socket. And then I will take the CPU. Now these CPUs were returned product. I think they came out of machines that were upgraded or something. But I wouldn't hesitate to buy a returned CPU on Amazon, especially if it's shipped from Amazon warehouse, because Amazon has good customer service. It's pretty unusual to ever have to return a CPU. We've got one video on this channel where we've seen a bad CPU. So it's one of those items you can pretty much safely buy used. Same with power supplies. They're pretty much going to be in, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong on those. So there's safe purchases for buying used product. I wouldn't recommend buying a returned motherboard unless you're a technician or you have a lot of technical experience so that you know what to look for and why it might have been returned. Sometimes it could be something as simple as the date being set wrong. Other times there could be damage to the board. You need to look for it. And of course, if you do end up getting a board that's damaged, it's more of your time. Even though Amazon will give you no hassles to return it, it's still your time to get it back over to Amazon, wait for your refund, and then it slows your whole build down, right? And unless it's a hell of a deal, it's probably not worth the 20 bucks you're saving. Unless you're like me and you're building 10 of them at 20 bucks a piece, that's $200. That's like almost like 2 free motherboards in that case. So it really adds up more in scale for stuff like that. But if you're a novice builder or you haven't built in a long time, I strongly advise you stay away from return components, with the exception of, as I mentioned, RAM will have a lifetime warranty. CPUs are generally always good. It's pretty rare to see a bad CPU. I would stay away from motherboards, stay away from any storage drives because you don't know how much they're used. And cases are a safe buy if you don't mind a couple scratches and dings on a returned case. That's, you know, but if you want everything to be perfect, if you want to increase your statistical odds of building successfully without there being a component problem, buy all your stuff new. And then as you become more comfortable building, and perhaps you're not on a particular timeline, you're not anxious, and you want to buy the return products knowing that if they're bad, it's going to delay your build, just understand those consequences and be prepared for them when you make that purchase decision. Now, this computer is going to Ohio, and I want to make sure that the board is new. I don't want to use one of the return boards. I'll use the return boards on giveaways or on local computers here, just in case there's an issue. There probably won't be, but again, just to be safe. With the CPU installed, the next thing I can do is put our solid state drive in right here. And the solid state drive can go into either of these slots here. They both run at by-4 speed, so I can put it up here or down here. And I think I'll probably put it right up here because I should verify that, but I'm pretty sure these are both by-4. I just think adding another one will be easier for the customer if we do this. Leave this one down here open. Although they'll both be easy to get to. So toss a coin, should be good either way. And we're not dealing with a super fast drive. However, on the B3, was it the H370 boards I was using, one slot ran it by 4 and the other one ran it by 2. And even the Intel drive would slow down it by 2. You'd only get about 1,400 out of it instead of 1,800 to 2,000. Both of these should be full speed though, if memory serves. And I think I'm going to go right up here. And what I like about installing solid state storage is, especially NVMe drives, is there's no cables. I don't have a data cable or a power cable. There's no cable management. You just slide that into its connector, and then you just put this screw back that holds the drive down. So all it's doing is securing its position. So you don't over tighten that. That's installed. That's 1 terabyte of storage and our CPU that easily. Now we can prep the cooler, right? So we'll set the RAM over here for a moment. So here we've got the cooler, and I'll show you how this is boxed up. There you can see the top of the heatsink. That also slides right out like this. You'll see that there's this piece of cardboard here contains the fan. This one contains the heatsink itself, which, as you can see through the bottom there, this is all being protected in this cardboard. And then this final cardboard box, this is all of our mounting hardware and screwdriver. And that's it. That's all that's in the box. They do a great job compacting all that in such a small space. So let's start by taking this out. Did you get how all that unwrapped? Good luck putting it back in the box. And I'll just leave that upside down right there for right now. There's some tape protecting the surface from any dirt, debris, oils from your skin. We want to keep that tape on there until we're ready to apply it to the CPU. So our thermal compound it can work as effectively as possible. In this box here, we'll open this up and show you everything that's included. This is all the mounting hardware for either Intel or AMD systems for all the modern sockets sold today. That's it for that box right there. And inside, we've got a great little screwdriver. Good luck getting something like that from Noctua. And this is $30 less than a Noctua cooler. That's equivalent. And then in this bag, got some documentation. We've got these fan brackets. There's 4 of them in case you want to add another fan to the other side of the heatsink. I never do that. This is our back plate for Intel. With this, the mounting screws are already installed. Unlike what Noctua is doing now, this saves a ton of labor time. So all we have to do is turn this motherboard over and line this up with the holes in the back of the board. And it may be a little bit tight, and you want to try and get all 4 in at the same time. If one corner goes in before another corner, see how it'll kind of seesaw, and you'll have to sort of set it down and just let gravity of the board force that back plate to be level against the back of the CPU frame. And then back here, you'll see that these holes line up with the holes in the CPU socket, and then there's a cutout. There's like a little moon-shaped cutout right there, and it's on both sides. And the reason it's on both sides, that means that you could turn this around the other way, and it still fits the same. With Noctua's redesign of the U12S, it looks like you could flip this around inside out. You could put the screws in the wrong places. The little clips could break. This is $30 less, and I think it's a superior mounting mechanism, which prevents misinstallation or a wrong installation, even from an experienced technician. They've made it. They've tried to make they being Noctua have tried to make their cooler compatible with the new socket 1700 12th gen, and I think they made an error in judgment when they did that, because they ruined the entire mounting technique and invited about 3 different ways for somebody to screw it up where it's not obvious. You just wouldn't know. Your cooler simply wouldn't be running well. And it's a lot of money to pay for a cooler and be able to screw it up all those different ways. So Scythe has addressed all of this by sort of making it dummy proof. Basically, you have Intel mounting and you have AMD mounting. And when we look in this bag, right here, we have 4 brackets. And you'll see 2 are straight and 2 are curved. These curved ones are for AMD. We're not building AMD, so we don't use these parts, right? So now there's less to screw up. Then in this bag here, we have, if I just pour this out right here, we have these spacers, whoops, right here. See these spacers? And then the bottom of the spacer has a little rubber washer on the bottom, and that's the part that's going to go over these screws. And there's going to be some resistance here, right up here, if you look here. There's going to be some resistance here as we push that down, and then that rubber washer is going to bump up against your motherboard. Make sure the rubber washer is the side facing the board so you don't scratch up the board or gouge into the board. And as you see, I do have to put some force on these to get them to seat, but that also is holding the back plate in for us. And I like to see that. When I'm working with other third-party cooler installs and they have these spacers like this, and they just slide and there's nothing that holds the back plate on. Those are so tight, I can lift this board up and I can even shake it, and that back plate right there, it's not going anywhere. That's because these are so tight. Then I can take those straight brackets I just showed you a minute ago, and you see where this lever is? We're going to cover that lever. And once again, this is a lot easier if you try and get both sides in at the same time. And that's just going to align so they face each other like that. And then back looking at this little pile of screws over here, if we come back here, these long screws here, there's going to be 4 of everything here. So these little weird things here, these are for Intel Socket 2000s. These long screws, these are for AMDs, so we're not using any of that. What we are going to use are 4 of these little thumb screws, and they're going to go right up on top to secure these brackets. Oop. I had one that rolled off the table, so let me just go over there and grab that real quick. Let's see, here it is. Got it. That'll go right there. And we can take the included driver and just tighten those down. These do not have to be over torqued, but just take them down until the screw won't turn anymore. There's good. Now these brackets are very difficult to install the wrong way, because if you look very carefully, there's a ridge here. I don't know if the camera can see that ridge. Let's come around this way. You know what, let's go around, let's go this way. Let's go this way and see if you can get the camera right down in there. You see this raises up to make clearance for these capacitors. If we were to flip this bracket inside out, it wouldn't sit flush on top of the screws. It'd be hitting those capacitors. So it raises up like a little bridge over those capacitors on both sides. About the only way you can screw this up is if you were to put these brackets on this, if we back up a little bit there, if we put the brackets on like this, where my hands are, then the cooler would install in the wrong direction. And the documentation that comes with the scythe, it's all pictures, so they're really easy to follow the steps. Now the holes here in the brackets are what the cooler is going to mount to. Like on the Noctua, you would mount on top of these little standoffs. But on this cooler, you mount onto the bracket, which I think is a much better design. And I'm not going to do that right now because the cooler is so large, it prevents me, or it makes it very difficult for me to get right up here in this corner where I have the 8-pin CPU power and the fan header for the rear case fan. They're going to go in these 2 points. So you can imagine with a big heatsink here in that 200R, it's pretty close in there to it's tight and confined space is what I'm trying to get at. So now I can go ahead and put the RAM in, and then we can test fire and even install Windows 10. But I will throw just an inexpensive stock cooler on that CPU in the meantime for testing purposes. And because I've had this motherboard for some time, I'm sure there's going to be a new BIOS update. So we can take care of all that. So put one RAM module in this first gray socket, and then the other RAM module here. With your RAM, if you're having trouble getting the RAM out of the package, like I am, do not bend the RAM. Just bend the package away from the RAM. There we go. You do have to lift up on the RAM, but what I'm saying is don't put too much force on it to cause the module to bend. Okay. And then, oh, well, I'm going to have a hard time putting a cooler on this now that I've mounted the brackets. Oh, let me think about this for a minute. I didn't think this one through. I guess we can go ahead and mount it into the case. I mean, I normally would boot this up outside, but I've been doing that because I've been buying some return product. I know everything here works. I'm a little uncertain about the RAM only because the condition of the packaging was torn like that. But that's easy enough to swap out when it's in the case. There's no confined spaces for replacing the RAM, if that's even needed. I don't advise people to power on their systems outside of the case. I think it's dangerous, especially if you're a first-time builder. For safety reasons, the board should be installed into the case, and you should be confident that you built it correctly anyway. So unless you have reason to suspect that that board's not going to work, like, you know, it's a return board and you want to test it, or I don't know, you have some suspected reason why you would need to test it out of the case, you could create a problem in doing so. You could take a board that's just perfect, and then by testing it out of the case, you could damage the board or any of the components, creating a problem you wouldn't have had if you'd have put it into the case before you tested it. So again, when you see me do that, it is usually because there's some component that is suspect that I'm checking. So what I'm going to do is grab the 200R case. So bear with me here. I'll grab Steve's case, which has the power supply and the DVD drive already installed. Give me just a second. All right. This one belongs to Steve. This is what he mailed in. We've got some SATA cables for some reason. Well, he does have the DVD drive, so we will need one of these. I'm going to just set these over here for right now. And this is what the machine or the case looks like now that all of the motherboard that was in there has been removed, and the heatsink that was bouncing around in there has been removed. We've got to get the I/O shield in there. The I/O shield is in the motherboard box here, so let me pull that out real quick. Get that installed. Okay, I'm going to step around to the front here, and let's point this way. Let me have you stand. I'd like the camera facing, yeah, thank you. So I'll stand over here. And so the I/O shield, some people, first-time builders especially, really struggle with this. It's something you get a feel for. It's kind of hard to describe, like riding a bicycle. You sort of have to experience it to understand it. But I try to get the top or the bottom corners in, both corners, and then try and get the opposite side in. And usually you'll hear a click or some positive sound or feeling that it's locked in. And it just pops out. There's no screws or anything that hold it in there. And I'll check the edge with my finger just to see if the Yeah, see, I just kind of made a little bit of a sound there. And because this case is used, it's not, I suspect the reason why I'm not getting that positive clicking feedback is because it's been used before. But see, this corner doesn't feel like it's in. Like I'm feeling down here and I don't feel any, there's a certain amount of metal that's sticking out and I'm not feeling that. So I feel like I've got to push on it. And I'm pushing in on the opposite side of this corner right here. But that may be, yeah, it just went in just a little bit. They're normally not this difficult. So I'm just running my thumb along the bottom of this, trying to push this edge out. And I'm checking the edges, that's all. Don't worry about the middle. Just check the edges and then make sure that you have about the same amount of metal sticking out. You can feel it if it's dipped in. If it isn't fully seated, you'll feel the difference. And this could make installing your motherboard difficult if this isn't seated correctly, because then your board won't sit flat. Your board will also be tilted, and then it won't line up with the standoffs, and you're going to have to push really hard on the board to force that I/O shield to move into it. And you can get there, but you're working a lot harder than you need to if you just make sure you do that step. Now, I need to make sure we have all the right standoffs in all the right places, so I'm going to lay the case down. And on this motherboard, if we look at where the mounting holes are, we've got 1, 2 mounting holes top, 1, 2, 3 across the middle, and 1, 2. Same 2 at the bottom or at the top, same alignment. And the same 2 are in the middle, same alignment. But then there's this third one. It's something Gigabyte does, drives me crazy. I very rarely run into a case that will have a mounting position for that. So for most of you, just leave that one empty. But I have these little plastic standoffs from the 90s that we used to use on motherboards. And I'm going to use that just as an added little support because it's there, not because I have to. So these are my little plastic standoffs in here. I have bunches of these. And so what I do is I take these and I take my angled wire cutters. I'll come over here and I'll show you. Back in the day when we used these, this used to slot into the motherboard tray. And you'd only have like 1 or 2 screws then, but you'd have like 4 or 5 of these instead of screws. What we do is we cut the nub off of it. And now what I'm left with is like a little flat table, similar to what you get in a pizza box. And that's going to go into the hole on the bottom of the motherboard and then support the board at the bottom of the motherboard tray. Now, this is not required. I want to emphasize I'm only doing this because I have these little plastic standoffs and I can use them. It's a good use for them. But I wouldn't go out of my way and acquire them just to install a board. Like I said, you can leave that one mounting hole completely empty. So we're going to just go ahead and put this in here. And that's just going to pop in like that. And you'll notice how I'm holding the board. You see I'm grabbing it by the heatsink. I'm not touching any of the components on the board, so I don't have to worry about electrostatic discharge. And I also work on a non-conductive surface. So if you want to wear an anti-static strap, you certainly can. I don't wear them. I've never worn them in over 2 decades. And I think if you handle your parts correctly, and of course, if you're on a non-conductive surface, which you should be on, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But there's no harm in wearing an anti-static strap if it makes you feel better. Now, the fun part is getting the board installed without the heatsink on it, because I usually hold on to the heatsink when I'm putting the board in. So I'm going to grab the board by the I/O here. See how I'm grabbing it? Then I'm going to move this box. Put it down there. And then again, I hold everything by the edges. And we're going to lay this down inside of the case here. And I want to line up these ports here with the I/O back here. And the way I do that is I lift up the back of the board and keep the front of the board tilted down. Well, technically, I'm referring to the back as the front. This technically is the front of the board from inside of the case. This is the back of the board. So I'm tilting it up in order to get these ports to align with the holes in the I/O shield, and also look for any metal grounding straps so that they don't get caught underneath any of your ports. And there's a post on this center standoff that should hold the board in place once I have it aligned. So if I just sort of keep it on that angle. Now if you come around here, if you look right down here, you'll see as I align these ports, that confirms I have the board lined up properly. And then I push forward on the board, push up against, see the I/O shield sort of buckle? And then the board will rest. Once I push it in, it'll rest down. If you look back up here now, this center standoff on most cases is a post. So I don't know if we can zoom that or not, but there's a little post right underneath my finger. And that's holding the board in position. And then we can check all the other mounting holes, right? 2 here. We've got a standoff here and a post here. So just 1 in the middle, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So a total of 5 screws. So let me find those. Hey, Tom contributes $2. Thank you, Tom. And Richard Bogan contributes $5. He says, do you still do speaking appearances for area user groups? I really enjoyed those. Thank you, sir. Richard, because of the pandemic and due to the fact that those presentations are given at senior community centers that generally are higher risk. So no, I haven't been, but I was just invited back to one of them in January or February, which I've not responded to them yet. I'm on the fence as to whether or not it's something I should do. Well, I'm vaccinated and, you know, other people aren't my responsibility. I still want to do what's right, and I haven't made up my mind yet. But because of the pandemic, all of that, for obvious reasons, was put on an indefinite hold. Doing them remotely doesn't make any sense to me because there's no sense yet. The whole point is to discourage people gathering together. So when I'm on stage, I'm usually talking to an audience of no less than, I'd say no less than 60 people and upwards of over 100 people. And they're all sitting right next to each other. You know, they're surrounded. So how they're going to space that out, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work because the space is still the same size space if the same number of people attend. I don't know how they can space them out safely without people being out of the room. And if we do it virtually, there's no reason for anybody to go anywhere. They could just watch it on the computer. And if they're going to do that, they might as well just tune into my YouTube video. It's very difficult to take questions from people in that kind of environment where people are watching from home. If they're all together in a room, we can participate, have a group participation, and everybody has a fair chance then of asking a question and interacting with me. So yeah, I just don't know yet. We'll have to see how this holiday season plays out with things, and if things calm down, I certainly miss it and I want to do it, but I also want to be responsible. And just because they're inviting me and they want that doesn't mean that that's automatically making it okay. I still have to be certain that I'm going to be in an environment where I won't make anybody sick. I'm not worried about them making me sick. I'm worried about them making each other sick, right? If we get them all grouped together. And even though that's not my responsibility, I can't deny the influence I would play in that. So I don't have an answer to that yet, but I am hoping the answer is going to be yes. I'm hoping I will be able to do that, but I just have to wait and see how, you know, if we have another spike again or if things calm down. Because if it's going to happen, it's usually, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas Well, everybody gathers. If we can all gather this year without a spike, then we're good. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the contribution. And let me put some screws down onto this board and secure it. Handy dandy Milwaukee M4 driver. Got a torque setting of 3 on this bad boy. So we're not going to over tighten these screws. We're going to make sure that the torque setting is not important. These motherboard screws do not have to be tight, but they do need to be secure. And since I have my OCD, I feel better knowing that they're all tightened to the same exact torque setting. Just gives me warm fuzzies. It's absolutely not a requirement. All right, so that's 2 out of 5. 3 of 5. 4 of 5. 5 of 5. That went in super easy. Now we can pick the board up here, and I will show you. The next step is giving the board power, and it's the reason why I don't have the heatsink up installed yet. We'll start with this 24-pin power connector. And I've left whatever power connectors Steve had included are what's connected to the power supply. I haven't touched any of that. This is our 8-pin CPU power connector that's got to go all the way up there. So what I do is I run it out this hole, and then around the back there's a small hole in the back here. And sometimes you have to kind of go in at a funny angle, and then we can pull that through. And you can see how much easier this is, as I mentioned, without any heatsink in the way. We can just easily reach up in there, align these 2 4-pin connectors together, and then push them until they click. And then we'll just push the slack through so we have nice, clean cable management in there. This fan here, somebody has already cable managed it. I guess that's going to be okay. Or I could re-cable manage it right now. Let me think. What's this going to look like? Yeah, I'm going to just change this cable management a little bit here. Normally, when you cable manage, you don't want the end of the cable going towards the cable. You want the end of the cable to be at the end. It's a complex topic, isn't it? I want the end of the cable to be at the end of the cable, not to be in the middle of the cable. This makes for ugly cable management because when you plug it in, you have like a little bow tie, right? And we want this to be like one long line, not like a letter T, which is what we've created here. So even though this case has no window and nobody's going to see it, once again, my OCD strikes again. I also don't like the color white of this nylon zip tie when I have black ones that are going to match better. So for all of those reasons that are completely stupid, I'm going to change it. Cut off those pigtails. And now that can go right up there. Would you see what I'm saying now, that the cable's just one cable? It's not doubled back on itself. And then we can even just kind of tuck in the slack up there. Now I can put the heatsink on. And that means first applying our thermal compound. So let me get ready to do that and clear this area right here. This build's coming right along. Let's not jinx it. Oh, I forgot. I was going to install the big power connector. is the only connector that looks like this. Only plugs in one place and only goes in one way. It's got a clip on one side. So for cable management reasons, to hide the cables, we run it out the back. It's going to plug in up here, so we're going to take it into the hole that's nearest to where its destination is. Right here. You'll see I pull all the slack through, so I have enough to turn the cable, align it, and then I sort of rock it while I push it on at the same time. And you'll hear it click, give it a light tug, it's not coming off. Then I'm going to push the slack back because now I don't need all that slack anymore. Now I can put the heatsink on. And I'm going to take these extra cables and we'll just lay them down here for right now. And we'll set the case down onto its side. Now, of course, I still have front port umbilicals to hook up, but I'm just really anxious to get this heatsink on here. And we'll make sure that this CPU is clean by using some rubbing alcohol. We have great alcohol for cleaning here, this isopropyl alcohol. That's 99% alcohol. And if this was 70%, it'd still be okay. 99% is what you want for cleaning. Lower alcohol content is what you want for wound cleaning. You don't want to try and clean a wound with a high alcohol content. You could make it worse. Using 70% on cleaning leaves a little bit of residue, not enough really to worry about. But if you can get the higher alcohol content for electronics cleaning, it is preferred. But I wouldn't try and save money and use one bottle for both. If you have it for medical reasons, get the lower alcohol content for medical reasons, and then use something separate for cleaning electronics. That's a little advice from your Uncle Kerry that prevents mistakes from happening. Any sort of, I guess you don't have to worry about contamination, but we are worried a little bit about residue here on electronics cleaning. Depends what you're cleaning. Back in the day, we used to clean tape deck heads and VHS, VCR heads, and it was a little bit more critical. So just a Q-tip is dipped in there, and this is going to air dry it. It's going to evaporate right off. Make sure you get all the edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's nice and clean. We'll give that a second to dry. Scythe includes this tube. Where did I set it? There's a tube of thermal compound. Here it is. They include this tube of thermal compound with the cooler. And it's not completely filled. That plunger is all the way about down there. So there's about enough thermal compound in here for 2 or 3 applications. Don't use the whole tube on your first install. This little cap on the end, give it a twist. It's about a quarter turn that comes off. And then we're gonna kind of eyeball, I'd say about that much. And we'll put the cap back on it to keep this from running out and making a mess. And then what I like to do is I like to take a nitrile glove, not vinyl, not rubber, but nitrile because it is anti-conductive. These are non-sterile, so they're very inexpensive. You can get these at auto parts stores or, Amazon, Harbor Freight Tools. And I'm going to just do a little finger painting here. And I want to cover the entire surface of the CPU so I can no longer see the silver. And then I'm going to tap on the thermal compound. And what that does, it creates little hills and valleys in there so that when I squish down the heatsink on top of it, it'll spread out and cover up any little, or prevent any air bubbles or anything like that from accruing. It's not an airtight system, so air can get into it anyway, but when that heats up, it gets viscous, very liquid-like. And as you'll see, or as you have seen in the past, when I test these machines and I run Prime 95, they get up to very high temperatures very, very quickly. And you won't be able to see the thermal compound and how viscous it becomes because it's going to be underneath of our giant heatsink right here. So if we pan the camera up just a little bit there, you can see I've got the heatsink here, and you'll notice the screws are offset. One screw is underneath the heatsink and the other screw kind of juts out. The screw that juts out, that's the side you want towards your RAM. That's where your fan's going to go. So when we install this, the first thing we have to do, and this is important, is we remove this piece of tape. And it even tells you, it says, peel off before installation. So now's the time to do that. Now it's absolutely spotless, polished, clean, no dust, no debris, no oils from your skin around there. Turn it around and place it directly on top of your CPU, just like that. And then using the included screwdriver, oops, which is magnetized, we'll start by just getting one of these screws started, which is very difficult for me to see. Let me grab a light. Yeah, we're going to start here. And you'll notice it has a spring on it. And I have to bring this over just a little bit. There it is. I just want to give that a couple of turns. I don't want to turn it too much because it's going to make the other screw higher up into the air and require more pressure to get it started. Now at the top of the heatsink, in order to get to that other screw, we've got to go down through this hole. That's why they include this driver. And you'll feel for it to seat into the head of the screw. And then you can look, well, you may not be able to look with the camera there, but once we get this aligned with the bracket properly, it should start. There it goes. I can feel it starting to give me resistance. Now I'm going to give that a few more turns. Then I'm going to come over to the other side and give it a few more turns. Try and catch up with where I was and then add a little bit more. And then come over to the other side and just repeat back and forth. What I'm doing is I'm feeling for the head of the screw. I'm actually working blind. I can't see it, but by moving the driver around, it will eventually seat. And you will feel when that happens. And this one, there it is. Okay, that one's tight. Once these come to a full stop, you can't turn them anymore. So it's a very positive feeling that you've got it at the right torque. You cannot over tighten these. If I were to try to turn, the screw will not budge. Any force on this, enough force, can break the head of the screw off before that screw will turn. So both sides are tightened to that point. And just double check them one more time. And again, you'll see I'm wiggling the driver around till I find, there it is, seats into the top of the screw, and that's secured. And then all we have to do is put the fan on it and then hook up the front port umbilicals, and we can test fire this bad boy and update the BIOS and get Windows 10 installed. So we're moving right along on this build. Super easy. It's a good budget build. You're looking around $800 for something like this, assuming you can get the case. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little cable management on this fan wire right now, because it's going to go up here at the top of the case. And once it's installed, it'll be impossible to get my hands back there. So this is the time now to tie this up. We don't want any of these metal wire ties in our build because they have wire in them. And in time, they get brittle, they break off. If it falls behind your board, it could short circuit something, and it's going to be a bad day for you. So by taking that out, it avoids that from ever occurring. It prevents it from occurring. So once again, back with those same 4-inch black nylon zip ties. I'm going to use 2 of them, just like I did before. And once again, nobody's looking in this case. There is no case window. But the reason why this is important is we don't want any of these wires to have enough slack that they could impede or interfere with the fan spinning, or you could run into an overheating situation. It also makes the system easier to work on for upgrades or repairs by having your cables managed when they're managed properly. So I'm trying to think how this is going to go on. We're going to put it on this side that with the logo that spins, that's the side that's drawing air in. So this side that has all these support brackets, that's the side air is going out of. So that's the side that's it's gonna go on like that. So it's gonna blow air through the heatsink and out the back. It's gonna align in the same direction as this fan right here, same exact direction. So to do that, I know I want my cable to come out this way. And I'm just trying to think how I want to cable manage this here. It needs to go, I think, like this. And don't make your cables too tight. You always want to give yourself a little bit of slack, especially if you move the computer or are shipping the computer. The cables, if they're too tight, can be yanked right out of their plugs. So don't cable manage it to that extreme. Just get rid of the majority of the slack, but leave yourself a little bit of slack, as I mentioned, for ease of use of working on it, as well as to keep the cables from unplugging themselves from being too taut. That's good. Get those pigtails off of there. And then we have these wire hangers. I call them wire hangers. There's 4 of them in here. We only need 2. The other 2 are if we wanted to put another fan. I mean, this would be crazy, but you could put 2 fans on this heatsink. So if you look down in here, you can see just why I'm saying this would be crazy. We're going to put 1 fan here, and we've already got a fan here. So in this little tiny gap, it's possible to add another one of these fans right there, leaving very little room between the 2 fans. The idea is to boost up the airflow so that the machine runs cooler. But of course, it's going to generate more power, creating more heat from the power supply. The motor from the fan generates heat, and in most cases, you won't really notice any degradation of temperature that results in anything worth the trouble, in my opinion. So I don't use an additional fan, just the one combined with the rear case fan. This is like having a second fan on the heatsink. It's just a couple inches away. So when I put the fan brackets on, or these wire hangers, I'm just going to go right through these holes here. I'm thinking about how it's going to attach, which way I want the fan to be oriented, front and back, top and bottom. This is how I want it. The logo in the back will be upside down. And that's so that the cable here goes out closest to the connector where it's plugging in order to keep our cabling looking as clean as possible. And since nobody is seeing this side of the fan, because it's up against the heatsink, it doesn't really matter if the logo is right side up or not. And the logo on this side spins anyway, so. So I just push those in, slide those into the holes, and they just kind of hold on them by themselves. And then what I can do is I can plug the CPU fan connector, plug into the connector, which is going to require some glasses here so I can see what I'm doing. That's going to go, oh, it's really dark in there. That's going to go on this connector right here. Then I'm going to bring this fan down as low as I can get it. And you'll see one of the things I love about these side coolers is these little cutouts in the top of the heatsink that the fan can rest in. Oops. Make sure those are well seated. So I start by simply aligning the fan into the groove. And then I pull back on the wire hanger and do the same thing on the other side here. This is a little bit tricky. I have to turn this so I can see. Got my fan cable in my way. Push that down. And then little bracket. It's if you look at the way that wire hangers, they slide into the grooves of the heatsink. I just want to make sure that that looks good. It's level. And then I've attached it because I have to kind of do it by feel. Once again, the 200R, very limited space up here at the top. It's one of the things I would change. That very minor little thing that, man, this case is so close to being such a perfect design, but there's no room certainly for a radiator up here. I don't even know why they bothered to put holes up there, to be honest. But that is what it looks like. And then we have our front port umbilicals, and we can hook these up really quickly. This is our audio cable, which I will run right through this hole here. I just want to make sure I untangle things before I get too involved. And let me step around, because that cable has a little blocked pin here, so it can only go in one way. And on most ATX style boards, it's going to be in this corner somewhere. That's it right there. It'll usually say F audio or front audio or sometimes just audio. I can see the missing pin is at the bottom row, so that's how I know to rotate that. And there's no clip or anything on it. It simply won't go on if you have it upside down. And then I rock it and push it at the same time until it sits flush against the board, and then push the slack out the back. The next cable I can hook up is another really easy one. That's our front USB 3.0 cable. And that's this thick cable, which I'm going to take a minute to straighten out. And that's going to go below the big power connector on our board, or most boards, which in this case, we've got one right there. So I could take it in from this hole or from this one, either way to cable manage it. It's got a little notch that it's keyed. It's called a key. So you can only plug it in one direction. There's no clips. There's no screws. So again, I kind of feel for it to get seated before I put any pressure, because I don't want to damage the pins. There it is. And then you'll feel it. Well, see, now it wasn't all the way in. When it's aligned, sometimes you'll hear it click, and they can be a real bear to take them off on some motherboards. Just kind of depends. This one is a little bit loose. This is another one you don't want to tighten the cable management down too tightly, or it'll pop itself right out of that socket. And finally, down here in this corner, we've got our power switch, our reset switch, our power LED, and our hard drive LED. And those, let's see, where are we going to run these cables? Yes, we'll run them. How do I want to do this? You know, I don't like the way that's run. I think what I want to do is run it this way. And now these cables can come in right through here. I know this looks a little intimidating, but it's just 4 wires, 4 pairs. And if we start with the HDD LED, that's our hard drive LED. I flip it so the words are facing down. That puts our positive cable to the left, and I start on this bottom row of pins from the left. Right above that is the power LED, which on the Corsair 200R, they separate out to a positive and negative. And just like the hard drive LED below it, positive goes all the way to the left, only now we're using the top row. So that's half of our intimidating cables. This is the reset switch. That doesn't matter if you put it on right side up or upside down, doesn't matter. Positive and negative don't matter on switches. It goes on the next 2 pins beside the hard drive LED on the bottom row. And then our last wire here is our power switch. And the power switch and the reset switch are both switches. They work exactly the same way. If your power switch ever breaks, you could switch them and use your reset switch as a power switch if you needed to. But everything's working here, so we're going to hook it up properly. Power, again, it's a switch, doesn't have a positive or negative. Even if it says positive or negative, you do not have to worry about that. I just keep my OCD happy and keep all the words facing up, except the hard drive LED. You have no idea how much that bothers me that I have to flip that one upside down. But that one goes on the 2 pins right next to the power LED on that top row, and it's directly above the reset switch. Now we can cable manage this and make this look all nice and pretty a little bit later, but right now it's time to test fire this. And so to do that, I'm going to need a couple of things here, which is, let's see, a power cable, a keyboard, a mouse, and an HDMI cable. So I'm gonna do that. Here's my HDMI cable right here. We're using onboard video with the integrated graphics built into the CPU. Should go faster sticker. And let's see, I make sure the power supply switch is in the off position. 0 is off. And we'll give it some power. I need a keyboard and a mouse. I've got a spare keyboard and mouse back here. And so let me come around, set these here, turn them on. I like this little kit because it's just one dongle. It's not one for the keyboard and one for the mouse. This is for both. It's not Bluetooth. You don't have to pair it. You don't have to worry about the little millisecond delay Bluetooth has. Really don't like Bluetooth keyboards and mice. Unless you've got a smartphone or a tablet, in which case Bluetooth keyboards and mice make sense. A couple of shots out here to give in the chat room. Thank you to Planet Cryos contributes $20 and said I had to catch up on the live video. And yes, you have to continually watch the price on the Evo Plus, which was $218 for a full day. And back about 30 days ago, it was $209. And he picked one up for $209. That's a great price for that Samsung 970 Evo 2 terabyte drive. Thank you for your contribution, Planet Cryos. More edits from Planet Cryos are coming soon. Rick Lakes contributes $10 and says, hello. Hey, Rick, thank you for supporting the channel continually. It's good to see you, my friend. And Planet Cryos again earlier contributed $5 and says hello. So thank you again, Planet Cryos and Rick Lakes for supporting the show. All right, now I think I'm ready to turn this thing on and we'll do the smoke test. So what I'm going to start is by flipping the switch on to the power supply. If you've wired something up wrong, you'll know because if I can find the switch, there it is. I've seen cases or instances where when you hit the switch on the power supply, the whole system turns on, and that's usually a sign you've shorted something out or something is wrong. So that's one of the reasons we leave it off. Now that I flipped it on, nothing has started as it should be until I hit the power button. I'm going to hit the power button now, and we should see these fans start to spin, which they are doing. And now I'm going to cut over to the HDMI input, and hopefully we're going to have a video signal. That's the wrong. Hold on a minute. That should be it right there. It says no signal, but give it a second. Let me see if I can, just so I don't confuse you, I'm going to go to this camera and I will put myself in a corner here. Now the system may take a minute to boot. And yeah, there it goes when we booted. Now we're on BIOS version, what is that, F3. And I've already downloaded the latest BIOS, which I think is like F4A or something, which basically turns on the Intel platform technology, the TPM basically built onto the chip for Windows 11 compatibility. And I have some concerns because when I updated another board to this newer BIOS, I couldn't turn that off. And that means Windows 11 could install automatically while you're sleeping. in theory, if you leave the computer on. So I don't know if it's the board or the BIOS, so I'm going to go ahead and update this BIOS to the latest and see if I can disable it. Because every time I disable it on the other board, when I restart, it's back to enabled again. So let's find out. So we'll hit the power, I guess I don't have to hit the power button. I'll grab my BIOS flash drive here. And I'm going to step around and plug it into any USB port back here. Right, like so. Let's see. We'll go to Q flash down here. Update BIOS. You know what, let me get rid of my picture because I'm covering up what I'm trying to show you here. We'll update the BIOS. There's our BIOS right there. Double click. Are you sure? Yes. Verifies that it's the right BIOS for the board. We can also update the backup BIOS. Sure, why not? And it warns us it's going to need to reboot during the process. We click OK. It just wants you to leave it alone while it's doing this. So while it's doing that, I guess I can turn this back on. And William Rainey contributes $5. He says, hey, Carrie, thank you for going step by step. Again, I will bookmark the video after you are finished today. Right on. Well, thank you for appreciating the effort that I go through to make that possible. Eddie Casanova contributes $20. Thank you very much, Eddie. Appreciate that. We'll make sure, I want to verify Eddie is a moderator in here, and we'll make sure that William is also a moderator. Yeah, he is. Okay, good, good, good. Thank you, guys. And now we just sort of have to bide our time right now and let this do what it needs to do. Don't interrupt it. If you want a successful BIOS flash, there's just one thing you have to do, and that is do nothing. Stay away from it. Don't touch the keyboard. Don't mess around with the mouse. Just let the machine do what it needs to do. And it may boot 2, 3, or even 4 times in the process. You'll know when it's done because it'll either load you back into Windows. We don't have Windows installed, so in that case, it'll say there's no bootable device when we try to boot up, or it'll just take us right back into the BIOS. That's how you know it's done. So for right now, patience is key. Bill Brulette contributes $5 and for some reason has selected my logo as his avatar. I don't know, to be offended or flattered. Thank you for the contribution, Bill. And Aida Rivera with $5 said, I think this will be my first build ever. It could be difficult to get that motherboard, but regardless, it's the same process of any 9th gen, 10th gen, 11th gen, or even 12th gen board, with the exception of the heatsink installation on the 12th gen. Will be a little bit different. William Dawson says, Carrie, can you tell Windows Updater to not install Windows 11 by selecting stay with Windows 10? I tried it. Yeah, so what happens, William, is Microsoft likes to play this little game where you can tell it I don't want Windows 11. And then it'll come back it'll leave you alone for a few weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, I would guess. I don't know, it depends on what Microsoft updates are doing. But through the Microsoft updates, it makes you go through that whole process again. And it'll just keep annoying you indefinitely. Now, there may be a software utility out there that can permanently turn it off, but I don't believe you're permanently turning it off the way you think you are. Pick up some of these boxes while we're waiting. Set them all over here. Okay. I make a mess. It's something to do while you're waiting for a BIOS update, man. Keep yourself busy. Otherwise, it's like watching grass grow. So, all right, we're starting our reboot here. And just waiting. So it has taken us back into the BIOS. You'll see we've got version F4C in that upper left corner. That's the version that we've just installed, and we verified that's correct. I'm done with the flash drive, so that can come out and be put away for another build, another day. And then I always go into set up defaults. Anytime you flash a BIOS, it's good to do the load optimized defaults option right here. And I'll click yes, and then I'll save and exit. Save and exit right here with the optimized defaults. And then we will end up back in the BIOS again, and I want to turn off the Intel Platform Trust Technology, the PTT, which is TPM. I want to turn that off because with TPM enabled, then that makes the computer Windows 11 compatible. And like I said, that's the best way to prevent Windows 11 from installing, is to turn that feature off in your BIOS rather than telling Windows you don't want it anymore. Now, what's happened is I've just saved the BIOS, and the system, for some reason or another, has not restarted. It's just kind of sitting here. This is another symptom I saw on the other board that I used this BIOS on. And I was thinking maybe it was the board because it's a return board. This is a brand new board. It's exhibiting the same symptoms. So I'm going to hit reset because it shouldn't be taking this long. I'm going to go back in the BIOS, and I'm going to turn that PTT feature to disabled, save it, and go back in and see if it stays disabled. So let's give that a shot right now. There may be some other component that has to be disabled with it, or something's not right. But first thing we do is go into advanced mode. Come over here to, I think it's under settings, miscellaneous maybe. No, it's not under miscellaneous. It's under, hold on, I got to make my screen a little bigger so I can see it over here. Let's go to the right. Oh, wrong keyboard, Carrie. Gotta use this keyboard over here. Oh, that is it. Intel Platform Trust Technology is disabled. Well, that's interesting. It's supposed to be enabled by default. Very interesting. So that's what we want to turn off. If we turn this on, as I mentioned, the computer will be Windows 11 compatible. And then Microsoft will annoy us. If we keep it off, then Microsoft says, oh, poor you, you can't have Windows 11. See? So that's the best way to prevent it, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and save and exit, because that's the way I want it, even though I didn't change anything. And I just want to see if after saving and exiting that it restarts like it's supposed to, or is it going to keep me at a blank screen? Okay, it did restart. So now what I'm going to do is turn the machine off, and I'm going to bring back camera 1 here so you can see what I'm about to do. I've got my Windows 10 installation media, and I have a video that shows you how to install or create your own Windows 10 installation media legally and free. You have to pay to activate it, but installing it and everything like that, acquiring it, that's all free and on the up and up. And then I'm going to just find a blue USB port, a USB 3.1, 3.2, whatever it is, because this is a very fast flash drive and I want my install to happen quickly. So I buy a more expensive flash drive because time is money, and I plug it into a fast USB port. When you buy those cheap flash drives, you could take 10 times longer to do something than you see me doing it. Just keep that in mind if time's important to you. So now the only thing the machine has to boot from is that Windows 10 installation media. So without touching anything, it should just start to load Windows 10 installation setup. And so with that, let's turn off camera 1 again. Let me go full screen so I can see again. And we'll go through all the same steps you see me do all the time, which is next, install, and then I click I don't have a product key. We'll do that afterwards. I'm going to do Windows 10 Pro right there, that one. And then hit next. And then we're going to agree to the end user license agreement as though we had a choice. Hit next. We always choose custom for the installation method. And it only has one drive to install to. And this is critical. If you have multiple drives, I suggest you don't add them during your build. Only put on your main drive first so there's no confusion as to which drive you're installing Windows on. Once you've got Windows installed, then you can shut the computer off and hook up one drive at a time so that you get the drive letters in the order that you want them, and shut off the computer in between hooking up drives until all your drives are hooked up. But just start with one drive, and then this becomes super easy. There's no decision other than to hit next. And now Windows is going to automatically partition this brand new solid state drive. It's going to automatically format those partitions, and then it's going to copy over all the installation files and install Windows 10. And all we have to do is wait. So we're back to waiting. And while we're waiting, I'm happy to again address any questions you guys have here. Michael Dane wants to know if I've looked at the Corsair 275R case. I think I looked at that 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it's got a case window on it. And I think was it too narrow? I can't remember, but I do have a build video or two featuring the 275R, and I didn't care for it. Now, I don't know if the case has changed since then, but I definitely prefer the 200R. With the 200R being unavailable, it might change my attitude at the 275. But from what I recall, I didn't care for it. But I can't specifically remember, other than a case window, there was something else. Paul mentions he's trying to buy another Windows 10 activation key from CDK Deals, saying they're temporarily out of stock. I know they're updating the website. I guess some of the links weren't working, and they want me to change the links pointing to a different site. So I'm not sure what all that's about. And I should have an update for you next week on that. Rob wants to know if I enable XMP after the build. XMP is just the maximum speed the memory can run at. It is not the speed your memory is likely going to run at. Your car may have a speedometer that goes to 160 miles an hour, but that doesn't mean that by putting in a speedometer that says 200 miles an hour, that you're going to drive the car, even at its previous maximum reported speed. So by raising the speed of the RAM up by overclocking it with XMP, some very few small percentage of people may see a slight performance difference on some software, but most people won't see it at all. It can introduce instability depending on the RAM and the motherboard. And so you'll actually, if you have a system that's unstable, you're going to be slowing yourself down every time you crash and restart because you wanted to go faster. So I generally leave it off. On AMD systems, there's more of a benefit to XMP, where they call it something else. But for most people, especially business users and people that use their computer for work, you don't notice any difference with XMP on or off because they're just simply not using the system in that way. Generally speaking, what I've learned about people in the internet is a lot of people like to boast their knowledge. They want you to know how smart they are. And so they ask these questions like, do you enable XMP? And it's as if they do it just to let you know that they know what that is. And to answer that person's question is kind of redundant because that person probably already has their mind made up about XMP and whether or not it makes a difference to them. But those people are few and far between as far as computer owners. The vast majority of computer owners wouldn't know the difference one way or the other unless it was causing the machine to crash. Now, since I have to warranty these machines, and since I'm the one who's going to get the call and I don't have any employees, I'm going to leave that off. If the customer wants to turn it on, that's their business. But I leave that off to ensure I don't get a support call. And it's why Dell and HP don't offer it. You can't turn that on in most Dell and HP computers. It's not even an option there for you because Dell doesn't want to deal with that nonsense because you went 3 milliseconds faster on some application or you got 4 more frames per second in some game you play. It's not worth the cost to the company to tolerate that. So for those people who care about that, they're going to do what they're going to do. But I want the rest of you to know that that may not be aligned to your value system. You may find a system that runs perhaps at most a couple milliseconds slower, but is solid, it never crashes, is far more preferred than risking a system that crashes randomly and intermittently because you tweaked and overclocked the RAM a little bit. But everybody's experience varies depending on the hardware, the RAM, the motherboard, the CPU, as well as how they use the machine. And I can tell you from 30 years in this business that my clients, when I turn XMP on, I don't tell them. And I say, hey, have you noticed your computer's any different? Like, oh, did you do something? I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you what I did. They say, well, if anything, it seems a little slower. And I'm like, okay, I just turned XMP on and now you're telling me it feels slower. So this is end users for you, okay? So it doesn't make any sense to turn that on if it's not going to be utilized anyway. So no, I don't turn it on. And I wouldn't turn it on until I knew the system was stable. So if it's a brand new computer and I wanted to turn XMP on, I would wait about a week just to make sure the system's running, because you turn XMP on and things start crashing, you won't know if you built it wrong, if you've got a bad part, you won't know why. Maybe it's an incompatibility. So make sure that you know your system is stable for at least a week, in my opinion, of normal usage where everything's fine. And when you turn XMP on, if anything negative occurs as a consequence, you're going to know exactly whose fault that is. And then you know exactly how to pursue either replacing the RAM, which is what you have to do in most cases, or replacing the motherboard till you get a set that works together so you can have your 2 or 3 milliseconds or your 2 or 3 frames per second. If it's worth that to you, that's the process I would follow. So we just finalized these steps here. This is going to Steve. I don't know, we'll put Steve's name in here, I guess. Caps lock is on. All right, and then we will turn all this off but location settings so we can get our time zone set for us. It's especially helpful when daylight savings occurs. Or if you want to find a restaurant or a business that's close to where you are, you could type into Google, where is XYZ company near me? And by having that location setting turned on, it works more like you would expect your smartphone to work. Planet Cryos contributes $50. He says, I got to be a sponsor this evening for you. In other news, I've ordered a Corsair iQH150i Elite LCD display liquid CPU cooler. To make it clear, I don't need it for better cooling. But it has an LCD screen which I can place my logo on. Where'd you get that idea from? Selden Bell in the chat created the logo that we're using on this NZXT Z63 cooler, and it's pretty cool, literally and figuratively. Blackwatch is confirming what I just said. If you have to ask what is XMP, you definitely do not need it. Agreed. Yeah, it's really for higher end enthusiasts that are willing to risk crashing in order to achieve a slight improvement in performance. And again, most people wouldn't even notice the improvement of performance based on my own experimentation with my own customers. It just shocked me when the customer said, well, if anything, the computer seems a little bit slower. That was I was expecting either, yes, it seems a little faster or a little more responsive, or I was expecting it seems the same. I haven't noticed anything. But instead, I got the one thing I wasn't expecting, which is it seems a little slower now that you ask. And that was after I turned XMP on. So, and they have no idea. The customers don't know what any of that means. So they weren't biased or predisposed to an opinion. Now that Windows has been installed, I can plug it into the internet. We don't do that until now because otherwise Windows 10 forces us to create an online account with Microsoft, which I'll let my customers do that if they want to. I like to create offline accounts. I don't even have a Microsoft account. But there's benefits to having the online account. But I have been living without it, so I know how to live without it. I don't miss it because it's not doing anything for me I haven't already been doing for years and years and years before it existed. But for other people, it can be quite useful. But again, I leave that to my customers to decide. So going back over to the Windows install, I'm going to go full screen over here. So once again, I can see, and I can get over to Windows Update and start grabbing all the Windows 10 updates. Now, the big Windows 10 update should be out fairly soon. That's 21H2. Should be out this month at some point. And when it comes out, when we install it, we won't have this giant list of updates that we're going to see here because it'll have all of that contained within it. Yeah, so we got this big giant list of updates. And we'll let that run. And while that's installing, once again, if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to provide answers while we're waiting for this to finish. John O'Brien says, I'm worried now about XMP. I've got 4 Corsair Vengeance 3000 RAM sticks showing up as 2133. I checked on YouTube, it said to make a profile and switch XMP on. Should I switch it off? Honestly, John, it's a personal decision. It's like asking me if you should, well, let me think. Put ketchup or mayo on your sandwich. You know, it just kind of depends on what your personal preferences are. You're not going to damage anything by turning it on, you know, if your system starts crashing. My question for you would be, what are you trying to achieve? Sometimes people call or they ask questions about non-existent problems. And this would be an example of that. So my question to you, John, is what problem are you trying to solve? Is there something wrong with your computer? Are there applications that aren't running correctly? Or is there crashing that's occurring, blue screens of death? Or are you just fixated on numbers and internet information and you just don't care about reality? The reality is when somebody hires me to do a job, it's usually because they're in desperate need. Something's broken and they can't function without it. They can't do their job or earn a profit. But when we deal with hobbyists and enthusiasts, they get sort of, well, addicted to information, even if the information is completely irrelevant and relatively negligible. And I'm not quite sure what this fascination is or where it comes from, because these same people don't seem to measure their own heartbeat or their own pulse rate in the same way that they watch their computers. They don't necessarily check the oil in their car on a regular basis, or the tire pressure or the temperature of the tires when they're driving the car, which are far more critical and can result in the end of your life versus whether or not your RAM is reading a certain number, which has no impact on your life whatsoever. So I get a little thrown sometimes wondering what somebody's doing. It's like, well, this number's supposed to say 3,000, it says 2133. So what? What's the problem? That's what I'm trying to get at. that is the problem, I disagree. I don't think there's any problem, but I think you're well on your way of creating one. But it's a great way to learn. And if your XMP isn't functioning, in other words, if you've turned XMP on and it's still saying 2133, that just means your RAM isn't compatible with that board. So it's probably not hurting anything and it's not helping anything. It's just defaulting back. But yeah, if you're having problems, I'm certainly here to help the best I can to help you solve them. But if the problems only exist in your head and they don't exist in reality, I'm not quite sure how to help with those. So I wouldn't go around chasing numbers. It doesn't make any sense to me. I care more about how a computer feels than whatever the benchmarks say. When a computer feels right, when it's working and it's solid and it's stable and it's responsive, I feel it. I can't put it into words. I just know it's right. And when something's off, I can feel that too. And then that's when I go about diagnosing and trying to figure out what's going on with it. But generally speaking, if you're not having any crashes and you're not having any issues, then you have no problems to fix, in my opinion. But what you choose to do on your own time in pursuit of experience and education is time that I would definitely encourage you to spend. But I have other things to do. I wouldn't worry about it. I doubt you will see a difference. Even if you got that RAM running at 3000, it will only run at 3000 when you push it hard enough to run at 3000, which, you know, in most cases is never for most people. But either way, yeah, so he's mentioning I paid for 3000 and I want to know why I'm not getting 3000. So that's another, I hear that from customers all the time. And again, it's sort of like you're paying for something that you are trusting the numbers on your screen to tell you whether or not you should be happy. It's like you can't be happy on your own unless the information on the screen is what you want to see. And now it's controlling your emotional state of mind. I just don't subscribe to that line of thought. If you've got a system that's up and it's running and it's working, I don't understand why you would pursue an attempt to harm it over some numbers you're looking at. If the computer feels fast to you, and if your computer is running to your expectations, the best advice I have for you is to leave it alone. However, if you want to become a technician or you want to pursue more education in the tech world, then messing around on your own computer that causes you all your grief is your form of school. And I would encourage you to do that. But if all you're trying to do is have your computer up and running, I'd say don't fix it if it ain't broke, and don't let numbers on a screen alter your state of mind. You're voluntarily consenting to that, and I don't know why anybody would. If you're happy with your computer, it doesn't matter what the numbers say, and it doesn't matter what anybody on the internet says. If it's meeting your expectations, leave it alone. Otherwise, you're well on your way to breaking it, which, like I said, can be a great educational experience. But understand that's what you're exchanging for some numbers on your screen. Now, on the positive side, you could figure out that the RAM you bought is incompatible, return it, buy a different set of RAM from a different manufacturer that's on the QVL list from the motherboard manufacturer's website, pay the extra money for that RAM. You think you paid a lot, just wait till you go on the QVL list, go through that hassle of returning your RAM, getting new RAM, plugging it in, then you get your 3000, and then your system's going to run, I'm telling you, exactly the same as it runs right now. You won't, in all likelihood, notice any difference. And you'll say to yourself in that moment, after you spent that time and that money, you'll say, now I understand what Carrie was saying. But some people, they need to have the experience. So I don't want to deny you that experience if you want to pursue that. But for everybody else, I can tell you right now, that's generally the road that you'll take in order to pursue that number on your screen. Versus, you know, having a good solid computer that runs well, just keep messing with it. Sometimes I wish I could just get a piece of tape and write a number on it and stick it on your screen and hope that that would make you happier. It's a psychosomatic issue for most people. Planet Cryos contributes again $25. Planet Cryos says the camera person is doing a great job and here is support for them. Okay, I owe you 25 bucks. Oh, wait a minute. Super Chat takes 30% of that. Oh, and then the government wants 30%. So I owe you a nickel. And John continues talking about XMP. He says, I think I'll switch it off. Better safe than sorry. It's my first build and I'm 21 years old. Well, when you're younger, you're going to, generally speaking, have a lot more time. But yeah, if you're turning it on and you're not seeing a boost at from 2133 at all, I'd leave it off. It doesn't really make much difference in most cases. Like I said, mostly on AMD systems, and even then, you know, you're just chasing benchmarks, man. And I'm just telling you, stop chasing the benchmarks. It's not healthy. It's not good for your mental state. It's not good for your wallet. But, you know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's your money and it's your time. I do want to set your expectations so that whatever you decide, you know what to expect. And then I don't feel bad for you. Because now you knowingly made your decision with all of the pros and cons so that you can make an informed decision that's right for you. It may not be right for anybody else. So I'm giving you that freedom to understand the risks and benefits involved in that. Let's see, we're back up and running here. Those updates happened quicker than I expected. Let me go back and run Windows Update again. Yep, there comes some more. Planet Cross contributes another $5 and here's the other 30%. Yeah, except they just took 30% out of that one. No, thank you though. Appreciate it. Lagrinia says Planet Cryos is on it tonight, right? Craig Lilly says, is XMP right for you? Ask your doctor to be sure. John continues, my first build since 21 years ago. Ah, well, then he's not 21 years old, is he? I gotcha. Well, good for you, John. I'm glad you built your own computer. Do you like it? Are you happy with your build? Other than the fact that you paid for 3,000 and you're getting 2133, apart from that poisonous information, which has really very little impact on how the computer runs for the way most people use their computers, are you happy with it? Is there something you would have changed or done differently if you had to do it all over again? Would you stick with the same board, the same processor? I'm assuming you'd buy different RAM because it obviously isn't compatible if you're not getting the speed out of it. But that's very, very common. And that's why the QVL lists on the motherboard websites exist, so that you don't have to experiment. They're not telling you that RAM not on the QVL list won't work. They're saying, this is the RAM we've tested and verified that does work. Other RAM that's not on this list, we don't know. We're not committing one way or the other. All we're saying is, we tested this RAM, and if you get this specific make and model of RAM, then it will work with XMP on our motherboards. Other RAM may or may not work. That's not on this list. Tom contributes $2. He says, Carrie, I moved to Arizona. Where'd you move from, Tom? John said, I loved my build. I got the idea from you months ago, and it's a Corsair 740 Air case. Right on. Is my audio messing up? Let's see. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. No, I think it's, maybe am I not projecting? That's probably my fault. Let's see. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you love your build. Yeah, don't let the little minutia upset you. Allergicus said, when I enabled XMP on my system, it became unstable. Blue screens and other odd issues. Needless to say, XMP is off. Yeah, I don't think it's worth the risk. Even if it appears to run stable, it could be, one application you run 3 or 4 weeks from now, and now you have got the crash. It's not worth it. You should have somebody randomly turn XMP on or off without you knowing, and then have you sit at the computer and see if you can tell a difference without running any benchmarks. Just see if you can feel it. I'll bet you can't feel it on an Intel system. Most people can't. But you may not be most people. Frank B says, nice build, Carrie. Thanks, Frank. I think Steve was going to like it. I'm sure he's anxious to get his computer back, and I think he's got another one we have to build after this one. But we just do one thing at a time. I get overwhelmed fairly easily. AJ says that black scythe cooler is sexy, so much better looking than my gray ones. Yeah, well, remember this case has no windows, so we're just going to cover it right up. But yeah, if you have a case window, I think that'd be more pleasant to look at than a silver cooler. Craig Lilly says, I never turn on XMP, and it's mainly because I'm too lazy to reset it after I update a BIOS. Good point. Good point. Michael Dane is telling my friend Ron not to forget to put lights and tinsel on his Christmas cactus. Bob Shoemaker joins us from Sun City West in Arizona. Wow, we got a lot of Arizona folks in the house today. Simon says he has a case window, but it's so dark tinted I can't see my cooler anyway. Yeah, what's the point in that? AJ says, I don't have case windows, but knowing how it looks makes me a bit jealous. I think they make pills for that can help you. Yeah, you know you reach a certain level of geek or nerd when how a cooler looks is defined as sexy or jealous. I have never had an average ordinary computer owner walk up to me and say, wow, that computer cooler is sexy. But I have a few friends that do that. I have a few friends that will look at a computer and they see that clean cable management and they'll see the RGB and they'll say, holy cow, where do you put the dollar bills? Something along those lines. Paul Kitching said he has a case window, but no case. Yeah. And we're still installing here, huh? There's a $20 Australian contribution from Alan Ronald. He says, greetings from Perth in Western Australia. Hope all is well with you all. Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you. G'day. What other Australian things do I know? AC/DC? Wait, that's not Australian. The band is. Vegemite? What do they call a beat up Volkswagen bus? A combi? A fried out combi? Sorry, I got lyrics to Men at Work in my head now. Thanks for joining us from down under where it is summertime. We're approaching summertime. I guess it's spring. Everything's backwards over there. Or everything's backwards over here. Depends on your perspective. Thank you, Alan. John wants to know any deals on RoboForm. I've been using it since 2001 when it first came out for free. Yes, talking with the folks at RoboForm, and I'm looking forward to having them back on the show and making another limited time offer from, oh gosh, I don't know, from whenever they're on until the end of the year. I think is probably the way it's going to work. I'm going to try and get them on next week. So, very timely question. Man, this update's taking a while, isn't it? Kevin Smith is asking if I'm using the Elgato for the camera. I use Canon XF400 cameras, and Elgato is the internal 4-port HDMI capture card, which is way more affordable than the Magewell card. Magewell card is $899 and only does 1080. The Elgato 4K 30 does 4K at 30 frames per second, so it also does 1080. In fact, my cameras are in 4K mode right now, and the Elgato card is automatically scaling them down at 180, so or 1080 rather. So I'm hoping that it results in a better picture quality, though it could be worse, I don't know. Simon said, I've actually learned so much from you over the years. I just want to thank you for all your hard work and bringing us these videos. Well, thanks, Simon. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that. Kind words on the internet. What's happening? AJ wants to know if it drains the camera batteries. The cameras are plugged in. They've got power. So the cameras will stay on 24/7 if I want them to. They even have little cooling fans in these cameras. John Duggan says, hello from Sweden. Hi, John, welcome in. David G said, I thought the Elgatos only had one HDMI port. Elgato makes several different models of capture cards, both external and internal. So there's a 4K 60, this is a 4K 30. I don't need 60 frames a second. I don't want to pay the extra money for it. And there's nothing you can really do at home to adjust frames per second. So if your bandwidth isn't enough to watch 60 frames per second, it makes my videos look terrible. 60 frames is usually when you're shooting something in high motion, sporting events, things like that. So I don't need it. There's no reason to spend the extra money for it, only to upset viewers who don't have the bandwidth. There's no gear control to reduce the frames. You can only reduce the resolution. Okay, I think this is ready to be rebooted. If I can see it. Yeah. All right. All right, I think this may wrap up today's video. You know the routine at this point, right? It's basically running the Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 optimizer, the few little tweaks that I do to, you know, turning off notifications and removing the tiles and unwanted apps, putting VLC on there to replace Microsoft Groove and movies and TV and the mixed reality portal. Just get rid of all that. Get rid of the Xbox stuff that it lets me uninstall 2 of the 4 Xbox things. And then it's going to need some cable management. So I've got some work here for Photo Ray. Hopefully next week, get him over here and put him to work on getting this bad boy cable managed and looking pretty. I've got to hook up the DVD drive still with the SATA cable and power cable. That still remains to be done. I'll have to put an activation code in for Windows 10 and get that activated and download the Intel driver updater tool and make sure all of that's updated as well. At that point, it's ready to be shipped over to Ohio back to Steve, and it'll be another notch on the tech bench. And then we'll move on next for, whose system do I have over there? That one goes to, oh, Rod. Yeah. So Rod's system is also waiting on cable management. I haven't had Photo Ray over here since I got back from vacation. I need to put him to work. I'm starting to get, I didn't have enough work to justify him coming all the way over here. Now I think we're ready. So I'll have to get on the phone to him and see what he's doing next week. So I've got the system for Rod, and then I've got a system for Bob Connors. That's the system I built using the 500 series motherboard with Wi-Fi a couple weeks ago. That one's going to go to Bob. Bob's been a frequent contributor here. He's also an Army veteran, and he runs, I believe, an internet service for other veterans in his area, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like between his generosity and his community service, that whatever the difference is, we're going to cover it and get that over to him. He absolutely deserves it. And if I added up all of his contributions, he may even have more than paid for it anyway. But just in case he hasn't, I don't care. These are the kind of community members that I want to support, and I want to show them how much I appreciate their generosity, not only to the channel, but even within their own community, and what I can do to support that. So I think Bob is also going to build his own computer. So the one I'm sending him is going to be his backup computer, but he's still getting parts for his build. So ideally, I'll have that one, once it's cable managed, to ship out to Bob, this one to ship out to Steve, and the one over here to ship out to Rod. And if I can get those done next week, that's going to be a good week to get 3 systems out of here. And then, of course, I still have the system from, come on, Carrie, what's his name? I'm looking right at it. This is from Bob Connors. He sent a 4000D Corsair case brand new in a box, and I'll use that in a build. I don't know why my brain went blank when I'm looking at it. It's Bob's stuff over there. But I got confused because I've got a system for Bob, and then some of the stuff that Bob had sent here is going back to him. He wants his old power supply back. He wants his old video card back, stuff like that. I think we're giving all that stuff back to him. And we'll try and use Bob's RAM on the new build because he's got 64 gigs of RAM. It's only 2133, but if it works, we might as well keep it and use it. If it doesn't work, then I'll just have 32 gigs in there that I'll send to him. So one way or the other, he's going to have a working system. And then if we don't end up using his RAM, I'll send his RAM back so he can use that, on a future build. That's a lot of money worth of RAM. It's about $200 worth of RAM right there. Captain Blinsky 58 contributes $5. He says, I'm having a cup of cappuccino. Here's $5 towards your favorite coffee beverage. I don't drink coffee or tea, but I do enjoy my Gatorade. So thank you for that. Hey, there's John Yasuda joining us in the chat. He says, great job as usual, Carrie. Use this for your channel, my friend. Thank you, John. Always good to see you. Let me fix the screen here because I don't think we need to be staring at the browser. Let's close this down. Well, it's hard to do it that way. Okay. Apparently I need to make the screen bigger because I can't see the little X to close the window. Oh, I was so close. Oh, no, it's just not working. That's interesting. Oh, because this window's open, I can't close. So I have to do this first. Complete setup. I don't want any of that. I'll close this out. Now I can close this out. And then I can shut this down. And you should see it power off like that. Yep, didn't let me down. Good, good, good. And we can go back full screen over here on camera 1. And we can make sure camera 2's working. Okay, camera 2 works. Look at me all fancy. Back over to... Did you see that? That's rude. That, I see what happened. When I resized the screen for 4K, it made that too big. Let's try that again. Oh, it's not working at all now. I've really messed up. Where did it go? Well, this is something I can mess with offline, but for some reason, there it is right there. I should be able to reduce that and move it. Okay, now I made it too small. How about that? That's not working. Yeah, well, this is the fun stuff I get to play with when I'm not broadcasting. Let's put it right there. Okay, that'll work. Now, if it stays there, let me lock it. Make sure it stays there. Then that'll be a good place to remind you, if you enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up button. And don't worry, the thumbs down button is basically going to be useless. YouTube is turning off the number reported next to dislikes because of dislike attacks to channels that get victimized by not so clever people who think they're being clever. And since this is just a never-ending cycle of people thinking they're clever, you know, they reach that age and they have this idea that 800 million people had before them, and then they start attacking some innocent YouTube content creator. So anyway, so YouTube's removing the number. You'll still be able to thumbs down a video, but you won't be able to see how many thumbs down it has gotten. And that's gonna discourage those thumbs down attacks, which, by the way, completely pointless. Anytime you have a thumbs up or a thumbs down on any content, it's so the AI, the artificial intelligence, can make recommendations that you're more likely, more aligned to your preferences. So in other words, if you're listening to Spotify and you don't like a song, you give it a thumbs down. And the Spotify AI says, okay, you don't like that kind of music, I won't suggest more like that. And when you give it a thumbs up, it says, okay, you do like this music, I'll suggest more music like this. You're not punishing the artist or reducing their income or harming them in any way by asking a bunch of people to hit thumbs down on it. The same is true with Netflix. You know, if you like a show, you give it a thumbs up, and then Netflix can recommend other shows you would likely enjoy based on what you're giving a thumbs up. And if there's a thumbs down on Netflix, I can't remember, but all it's doing is tuning the AI to your individual preferences. It has no negative impact whatsoever on the content itself. So I don't know why people on YouTube don't apply the same rule of thumbs up and thumbs down as they do to every other app they've ever used in their life. It's not like it's a rating system. Like if you're rating your Uber driver or you're rating, it's not a thumbs up and a thumbs down isn't a rating. It is training the AI on what to recommend to you. That's all it's doing. That's all it's ever done. So these downvote attacks are just very strange and pointless. And I'm happy to see YouTube remove the number because it just didn't make any sense to show it. Jason Urbank wants to know about memory speed. Intel CPU performs faster if the CAS timing is low instead of speed. Well, AMD Ryzen requires memory speed instead of low CAS timing. Gamers Nexus has a video about this. Yeah, I mean, that's the channel you want to watch for content like that. I consider that tech minutia. Those are the kinds of questions that make me want to quit my job.
when people care about milliseconds, given the massive gains that we have with Moore's law, every 18 months or so, the technology keeps doubling and getting faster, that these little tiny performance gains through an enormous, immense investment of time and education makes me just want to walk away and go, this is just stupid, right? It's like, for me, it is a pointless activity because any gains that you have perceivably made will be significantly less impressive when the next generation of chip comes out, which is about every 18 months, 12 to 18 months, another chip comes out. When that chip comes out, it is markedly faster than any amount of RAM or overclock you've ever done, universally. And then it's just going to run that fast out of the box. Now, if the gains were taking 10 years, then I'd say, okay, this makes more sense. But your gain is just for a little tiny window of opportunity where you can have that little performance boost before the next chip comes out, and just out of the box, without any tweaks or anything, just runs faster than what you've got, even with slower RAM. So that kind of stuff, I'll let Gamers Nexus do that. That's what I refer to as tech minutia. It's like counting the granules of sand on a beach. And I'm suggesting that you just enjoy the beach. You don't have to count every grain of sand and determine which part of the beach is more cushioned or more comfortable based on how many grains of sand per square foot or per meter there is on this beach. It is incredibly tedious and I think a complete waste of time for a perceived notion of what is better. But that's just my opinion on it. Remember, I'm in business to help customers and to help as many customers as possible. And I can't spend that much time with the customer over something so insignificant that is a hobbyist enthusiast activity for people with nothing else better to do. In my opinion, as a business owner, I would be out of business if I did that, because nobody would pay me the hours and hours and hours it would take for testing. Or I wouldn't have enough people pay me, I should say, that I could sustain my business. I would be accused of ripping people off. You know, he did all this and he claimed to do all this, and it doesn't seem any faster than me. And he showed me the benchmarks, but I'm telling you, it doesn't run any different. That's what regular customers will say. And so for those people who care about stuff like that, they are generally their own technicians, and you don't want those people as customers because they're telling you how to do your job, and they should just do it themselves. They're very difficult people to please. And generally speaking, they're also not people that are going to open the wallet and pay you your rate, because they have an idea of what you're doing and they have an idea of how much they're willing to pay for that. Whereas other people are like, I don't know, it's a computer, it doesn't work, just fix it. And then they have a different idea of what that should cost. So there gets to be a point where if I take my car to a mechanic, I understand when I'm being lied to, or when I'm being advised information that is made into a bigger deal than what it really is. And that would make me a more difficult customer, because you can't just spout your values off to me and tell me what's important. I know what's important because I know how to work on cars, and I can tell the difference, and I have an idea of what that value is of that work, right? And I know that I can, change my car battery myself for $100, or I can take it to the dealership and pay more than $100 for the battery and then pay for the labor on top of it. I also know I can take my car to Walmart, buy the battery at a very low price, and Walmart will install that car battery for free. So because I know this makes me a more difficult customer, because I understand what the work is, whether or not it's important, and what that part would cost and how much time it should take. So I have an idea of how much to pay. Needless to say, I changed my own car battery and I changed my own air filter in my car. So knowledge is power. When you get to a point of caring about minutia, when you care about your spark plug gap, at that point you need to be doing it yourself, because you would be very, very difficult to please. And you would require so much time and would probably not pay what that time would be charged to other customers that could have been helped in that same window of time, that business, if they pursued customers like that, would probably not be sustainable. So just keep that in mind. Not everybody's, not what everybody wants to do on their personal time is something they would pay somebody else to do. So, you know, you've got to determine what something is worth for you. So like when we talk about XMP or we talk about CAS latency on RAM, most people just don't care about it. Nobody's buying a Dell or HP computer over at Best Buy and asking what the CAS latency of the installed RAM on the pre-built system is. It's just never done. Never, never done. Those people who care about those questions don't buy those kind of machines. So anyway, just an interesting psychological observation, and I want you to be aware of it as you watch other enthusiasts making videos here on YouTube, because they often spout that same value to minutia that the rest of us couldn't care less. Doesn't matter. It's not a major difference. It's not night and day. It's vague. At the very best, with all your best CAS latency and all your XMP and all that other stuff, the difference is very vague to most people. And they'll shrug and go, that made a difference? And you'll be like, yeah, I spent all this money and I did all this testing. Okay, so let's start your computer with a stopwatch, see how long it takes you to get to the desktop. And then here's my computer over here, a pre-built from Dell, let's just say. Let's start the stopwatch and let's see what the time difference is. And most likelihood, the amount of time it takes you to hit the button with your finger is the difference in time. It's milliseconds. But again, if that's important to you, don't let me get in your way. I just don't want other people who think it's important. I don't want you to think it's important, because it's important to these enthusiasts. It's not important to most computer owners. But that's a decision for you to make. There's Bob Connors there in the chat. He says, great talking to you yesterday. Right on, Bob. Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, I got to get on the phone to PhotoRay and put him to work next week. And we can get Bob's computer out, get Steve's computer out, get Rod's computer out. I need to get some of these out of here. Any final questions? We're going to wrap this up otherwise. What I've got next, I've got a Canon digital SLR camera that is being promoted for use in vlogging. I noticed a lot of YouTube content creators are using digital SLRs for cameras, which doesn't make any sense to me. Camcorder should be the way to go. But maybe there's a superior picture quality. It may also be better on the close-ups than what we're using now. But what I decided is I want to unbox this camera over at Amazon Live. And with Black Friday and all the holiday shopping coming up, I'm going to be doing a lot more focus on Amazon Live and less focus here on YouTube. So if you want to watch more content from me, be sure and follow me over at Amazon. You go to amazon.com/shop/Kerry Holzman, and you'll see videos there. And I will have unique content that is only at Amazon, and it'll be mostly product reviews and product overviews. I'm going to start with products I enjoy, that I personally endorse in my own business, that I use. When I say endorse, I mean I use it myself. Once I go through all these products that I use myself, I'll start evaluating other products, just honestly unboxing it, giving my first impression. And I'll try to make those videos a bit shorter in the hopes that Amazon will tie those videos to the product pages. So somebody who's considering buying that product can see my video, and if they like me and they want to see more of my videos, they'll follow me there. And I'm hoping I have more of a financial opportunity to grow at Amazon than I do here at YouTube, at least from November through the end of December. And I'm very curious what that opportunity looks like. So there'll be still YouTube content, but especially from Black Friday through the end of, well, at least through Christmas, I'm going to try and do 3 days a week over at Amazon and 2 days a week here at YouTube. And then once we get over the holiday, then I'll probably revert back and flip it the other way. But it depends on performance. Whichever one performs better is the one that's going to get the majority of my time. So, but you don't have to pick one or the other. You can enjoy both. I obviously am not doing them at the same time. So you can check out my Amazon Live content as well as my Amazon uploaded content. Amazon.com/shop/Kerry Holzman. That's my Amazon store. And everything you see that I use, from the CPUs to the coolers to the tools, it's all in my Amazon store. Anytime you make a purchase from my Amazon store, or even use my Amazon link, I make a small commission off anything you buy. You're not paying any more. And I don't know who you are. I can see what was purchased, but I have no idea who purchased it. And assuming it doesn't get returned, there's like a 30-day window where Amazon holds the money, and then after that 30 days they release it. And so you're still getting the great deals at Amazon with the great customer service, and I'm making a small commission from it because you used my link to get you there. And it's a good way to support the channel, but of course you're doing so anonymously when you do that. And even small purchases, you know, they all add up. And I've also added, someone was asking me about these little suction cups you've seen me use on CPU insertion and removal on Intel CPUs. So these were added to the Amazon shop as well. Okay, well, again, thank you to everybody for joining me today. Patrick Rousseau just put the link to Amazon right there in the chat room. And let's see if I have that list. Did we keep the list? Thank you to John Yasuda, Captain Blinsky, Alan Ronald, Tom, Planet Cryos, all your contributions. Thank you so much. Ada Rivera, Bill Brulette, Eddie Casanova, William Rainey, more from Planet Cryos, Rick Lakes, Tom again, Richard Bogan, David Kudajar, Dennis Paulson, Michael Dane, Colin Hunt. Did I miss Collins earlier? Colin Hunt contributed £5. I don't remember saying that one out loud. Thanks, Colin. Robert Kajna, Ian Gooch, Thomas Backenstow, Bob Counters, Peter Laycock, as generous as ever with his £50 contribution. And of course, Planet Kraus with his added up contributions. And Tony Wallow, of course, who kicked us off with $4.99. Mitch will be back. What's next Friday? Is next Friday? Next Friday is the 19th. So yeah, Mitch should be back. And then the 26th, that'll be back Friday. I won't do a video here on YouTube. I think maybe later in the evening, but I am scheduled to be live on Amazon from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time and make a video that Dell wants to sponsor. I don't have all the details yet, but it's going to be very different for me, but I'm looking forward to it. And I think what that video is going to be is me just answering a bunch of common questions that I get, because I don't want to talk about products that compete with the sponsor. So I'll talk about the sponsor's product, which is Dell, and then I'll talk about just frequently asked questions since the Amazon audience is new. And I'll share my 30 years of experience with those common questions and answers about RAM and XMP, and do I turn the computer off or leave it on? All those very common questions. I think I can fill 2 hours up pretty easily with that, as well as invite folks that are joining in the live chat to ask questions while I'm live. And then do a product overview. Dell's sending like 3 or 4 products, and I'll just do an overview of them. I won't have them very long before the broadcast, so I won't get to really familiarize myself with them. I won't have time. But I myself, when I buy a laptop, I buy Dell XPS laptops. That's my personal choice. So, you know, having an opportunity to have Dell sponsor me, especially when it comes to laptops. I don't build laptops. You can't really build a laptop. Not really. You can buy like a bare bones, but you can't really design your screen and your battery and everything in your case. But be that as it may, I hope you'll check it out, and you'll see a slightly different format. Whereas here, it's more informal. Over at Amazon, it'll be slightly more formal. Thanks you guys for hanging out. Thanks everybody in blue for helping me out. Again, check out Doug Betts live Windows training. He's got a link there to, he's got a live stream scheduled for tomorrow. Be sure and check that out. I shouldn't be live tomorrow, so no competition there. Doug does great work and shares his experience and knowledge and shows it in real time. So if you haven't subscribed to his channel, I highly recommend that you do. He's very good. And I am going to wrap it up. So for everybody else who's not blue, I hope to turn you blue. Just keep showing up, keep participating in chat. And as I get to recognize your name, see you as a regular, see that you're a kind, supportive person, I turn you blue. It doesn't really have to do with contributing anything other than, not being a jerk. And people, sometimes they show up and they see all the blue and they get intimidated by that. But everybody in blue is proven to be an upstanding citizen in general in the world community. And they're acknowledged by turning them blue so that these folks in blue are all friendly, kind, and supportive individuals. They're not police. They're not a gang. It's a badge of honor here that you can be proud of, and it is earned through just leading by example, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. And we have a lot of people on the internet with nothing else better to do that get entertainment from disruption. They're not going to be turned blue here. In fact, if anything, they might be banned altogether. So I hope that you aspire, if you're new here, to be blue. I'd love to turn you blue. I would love to see nothing but blue in the chat room. And the community we've got here is amazing. And I think there's a lot of room to grow. And I'd like to see this community just get 1,000 times bigger with a bunch of kind and supportive individuals so we can sort of outnumber the jerks, right? That's my goal. That's going to wrap it up for me. I will see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.